never ends. It keeps climbing in terms of speed. Like I can't even talk right now because I'm like, my hands are just like quivering because it's so intense and it sounds so good too. First time I've ever been behind the wheel of a V10. That is quite the experience already, let me tell you. Woo! Listen to that sound. What is going on, everybody? How are you all doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic as always. This is the first time I've ever been behind the wheel of a V10 powered BMW, actually just a V10 powered vehicle in general. And wow, the E63 engine is a total animal. I have never experienced something like this. This is a 2007 BMW E63 M6 featuring the E63 10-cylinder V10 engine, and it sounds absolutely insane. As always, get a load of that sound. I hope it's really coming out through the camera because it is such a wonderful exhaust note with this V10 engine. Now this BMW is truly a hidden gem of the E-Series, I think. I think it was largely underrated. I think it was a car that went very unnoticed for the most part, and it got an exceptionally bad reputation because of its power plant and some of the notorious reliability issues that these cars perhaps are known for. However, this is my first time behind the wheel, as I stated previously, and just taking this car through some back roads, it is such a blast to drive. Without wasting any more time, let's just dive straight into the power plant of this car, which is that V10 engine. Now, this is the E63, and it is a bespoke M power plant. It is something that is completely unmatched. There is no other engine that the M division has ever developed that has even come close to the characteristics and the overall design and architecture that this engine has. It is derived from BMW's old school Formula One V10 engines back when they did participate in Formula One. It is dry sumped, it has forged aluminum pistons, it revs all the way to 83 or 8400 RPM, something like that. It is just so easy to get lost in the power band of this car. And it produces about 507 horsepower. It is just ridiculous. The power band is exceptional. It is so smooth. It is so free revving. It has so much character in the exhaust note. And you guys will see, just based off how this thing sounds, it is such a riot at the limit. Now, currently I have the car set up with the M button. I have the SMG gearbox in the most aggressive shift setting. The car is making the full 500 plus horsepower, and the traction control system is completely off. Now, this is truly the way to experience this car if you do want to drive it properly, because you get the full beans and you get the full experience. And today we're out here on a gorgeous winter afternoon in San Diego, California, just taking the car through these back roads. And it is really cool experiencing this car. This is truly a hidden gem and a last of its kind. I mean, BMW made this engine for just a few years. They put it in the E60 M5, the E61 wagon, if you live in the European countries, and then this E63 M6, and that was pretty much it. And there will never, unfortunately, be another engine like this that will ever be used in another BMW production car. It is such a distinct power plant for that exact reason. This S85 V10 is truly motorsport derived, and it just feels like a total race car. Now we have entered some canyon-styled back roads, and just sort of bringing it through these twisties, it's incredible feeling the steering as well as the suspension. This car actually handles pretty well. It's not the lightest thing in the world, but it does have some cool technology such as a carbon fiber roof, a lot of aluminum suspension components, a lot of aluminum chassis bracing components, and a lot of lightweight aluminum internals in the engine as well. The hydraulic steering on this car is exceptional. It feels really good. It provides you with a ton of feedback. You get a lot of feeling of where the car is in terms of the frontal direction through the steering wheel, and the steering itself is also very direct. Now, the steering for a hydraulic setup on a BMW from this era feels a little bit light. It is not as heavy as I was expecting it to be, but that's honestly okay. I feel like a lot of people nowadays sort of just equate heavy steering to good steering, and that could not be farther from the truth. You don't need something that requires a ton of muscle to turn the wheel just for the steering itself to be good, if that makes sense. The hydraulic rack itself just feels very responsive. It allows you to point the direction of the front end of the car into these turns very easily. And again, the chassis itself feels pretty good overall. In terms of the suspension, this car is equipped with BMW's first generation of EDC dampers, and right now it is in the stiffest setting and it feels good. You know, it's not too stiff, I would say. It's not overly compliant, and the adjustability of the dampers for a car like this is nice. After all, I think the overall purpose of this car was for it to be sort of a grand touring vehicle and not necessarily a raw sports car from the ground up. Although driving it right now, it definitely feels as though it is a complete sports car. Let's touch on this gearbox, because this is arguably one of the most interesting aspects about this car. So the E63 M6 could have been equipped with a 6-speed manual from the factory. However, it is incredibly rare to find one equipped with a manual gearbox, and while that would be an absolutely incredible experience, all the other M6s and M5s as well from this generation were equipped with SMG3, or I believe it's the third generation of BMW's SMG gearbox, which is a semi-manual, single clutch automatic gearbox. And this transmission is filled with so much character. It feels alive. It feels as though it is a manual transmission, but you're not actually operating a third clutch pedal. Now, what's interesting is on downshifts, this gearbox will actually rev match for you, and when you're upshifting at redline, it is incredibly violent. I mean, it's like back-breaking violent. Like, it launches you forward and then kicks you back in the seat as soon as it engages the next gear. It is so much fun to drive, and while by no means is it as responsive or as quick as a modern day dual clutch or even a modern day ZF automatic transmission, this SMG is truly something that feels like it's from a race car, just because of how hard it shifts and just because of the adjustability and the way that the gear shifts are engaged. It is part of what makes this car so much fun, and it makes doing pulls in this car extremely addicting. The other thing I'd like to touch on about this M6 is the throttle response. This is a naturally aspirated engine, something that is absolutely non-existent in BMWs nowadays, and it's something that is quickly diminishing in sports cars all across different manufacturers. And it is so refreshing to hear the instantaneous change in the exhaust tone the moment that your foot presses the accelerator, to also feel the instantaneous throttle response the moment you hit the accelerator. This car has actually 10 individual throttle bodies that not only aid in the absolutely menacing induction note of this V10 engine, but it also enables an absolutely killer throttle response from the gas pedal. It just feels so alive and it feels so responsive. It allows you to basically modulate the throttle as much as you want with just the slightest input of the accelerator. And that is something that is sorely missing in so many cars nowadays, that, you know, a lot of people lack. And when you hear a lot of those automotive journalists talking about turbocharged engines, the throttle delay and turbo lag, they're referencing it in comparison to an engine like this, where the responsiveness is so instantaneous and it really just aids in that driving experience. So when you're absolutely at redline with the pedal completely pressed to the floor, the SMG gearbox shifts really, really quick. It's just so addicting, as I stated previously, to just press into the throttle and listen to the V10 engine scream. It's a really good driver's car. I think at first glance you wouldn't necessarily expect this car to be a driver's car, but it really is. It has a massive V10 naturally aspirated engine. It has a single clutch automated gearbox. It's got hydraulic steering. It's got a lovely exhaust note. Limited slip differential that's sending all the power back. And that's the other thing that's really nice too, is this car puts the power down. With traction control completely off, even flooring it in first gear, the car hooks up no problem. And you can totally utilize the 500 plus horsepower that this car produces. And I think it's also a little bit refreshing that the car isn't producing something like 450 to 600 pound-feet of torque. It's in the mid to high 300 range, and that doesn't upset the rear end of the car. It actually feels really balanced, and it encourages you to rev it out. And that's really what this power band is all about. It's just about revving it out, bringing it up to the red line, and 8,000 plus RPM. You can't go wrong with it. So I've touched on quite a bit of things that I like about this car, and trust me, what is not to like about this car? Let's get into some of the negatives, shall we? Now, in my personal opinion, I think the steering is just a little bit too light for my personal liking. I wish it just had a little bit more weight, although it does provide a ton of feedback, which is really, really nice. The gearbox, it's easy to ding it because it's not the most responsive, unless if you're completely at wide open throttle. That's when it shifts really hard. And the downshifts and upshifts anywhere else are not the most responsive. But it's still really fun. I think, you know, compared to a modern day dual clutch, as I stated previously, the gearbox definitely shows its age. It's not modern feeling by any means, but it provides so much character paired with this S85 V10, and you know, it really makes it enjoyable when you're upshifting at the limit in this car. The interior space in this car with the E-Series BMWs is nice. It's very simple, relatively bare bones compared to so many modern day German vehicles, especially on the luxury side. But there are a couple little like build quality things. The leather on the dashboard is starting to peel away a little bit, which I know the owner had mentioned that he was planning on touching up on that soon to sort of mitigate that issue. And there's just some plastics in the interior that sometimes feel a little bit rattly or squeaky. But again, it's nothing crazy, and you're not really buying a V10 M6 because you're in love with the interior like with so many of these sports cars. You're purchasing this car because you want to enjoy this power band. You want a nice GT styled, low and sleek two-door coupe that has an excellent soundtrack with amazing throttle response and good power. And that's what this car has. It handles so well. I'm not pushing it crazy hard, but even on this suspension setup, it feels really nice. So in terms of modifications, this M6 is equipped with a Valvetronic muffler system for this S85. There's also no secondary cats and there's also no resonators. So that's particularly why it has such a wonderful V10 soundtrack, as you guys probably have heard multiple times over and over now. And the car is also fitted with some Eibach lowering springs, which definitely give it a nice and tasteful drop, and also paired with the EDC dampers makes it handle pretty well. This car feels nice and planted throughout the canyon roads. It's not race car like or race car stiff, but for a car of this nature, it's more than adequate. And regarding the wheel and tire setup on this car, since I'm sure many of you guys are going to be asking, it is running a set of OEM F13 M6 BMW wheels that are actually powder coated in a satin black. Now, these wheels do not fit a standard, on their own, they're not going to fit the E63 M6 body. So the owner did have to put a 25mm spacer up front in order to clear the strut. And I believe the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S is a 305 in the rear, along with a 285 Michelin Pilot Sport 4S up in the front as well. Now, the owner actually had to trim the rear fender liners as well because there was a slight rubbing issue with this wheel and tire setup. But overall, it looks killer, especially compared to the original OEM setup that it's on. The satin black definitely gives it a very aggressive look. And the exhaust system as well, as you guys probably saw with the visual clips, also has some carbon fiber M Performance styled exhaust tips. Holy crap. Oh my god.
Never gonna hit red line, it just keeps going.
It just keeps revving. And what's so cool is, like, unlike a turbo engine where the power dies off at the last like 1500 RPM at the power band, this thing keeps building power all the way up to the very last moment. And then you upshift it and it's... Oh, what a cool car, man. Now I see why everybody, you know, talks about this engine and they rave about the V10 and why it's so awesome. It truly is. And it's a shame. It is a sore shame that this engine, a car like this, will never ever be in existence again, especially from an automaker like BMW. And it is such a special M car for that reason. Everything is bespoke. There's really nothing about this car in terms of the mechanical hardware that is relatable to a normal 6 Series or anything else that BMW had in its lineup. It is so special in that regard, and the production of these cars was relatively limited too. And for good measure, we'll go ahead and hit it from first one more time here. What an epic car, guys. I think we're just gonna conclude it right there with that last pull. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, as always, please make sure to hit that thumbs up button. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new here and haven't subscribed already. I hope you guys enjoyed this review on this M6, and big shouts to the owner for letting me drive this thing and do a review on it, because this is such a special vehicle and there really isn't going to be many like them out there in the future. So I will catch you all in the next one. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.